All right, so we're back here on another special Couch Coach Live. Wow, we're into at the final stretch of our Power Five conference. We saved the best for the last. The SEC. What's going on, Zach?
Not much, man. Hey, this is where I thrive, man. From Alabama, Auburn grad, this is the conference I live and breathe, man. So as much as we cover all college football in our show, man, I got a special place for this conference. So I went bigger and better, man. Pick more games, pick more players, pick more sleepers. We're going big for the last show.
All right, I am definitely loving that, and obviously, Zach from the Blue Bloods podcast, and also a colleague of mine on the Off the Ball Network. It's a been
Hey,
official.
man,
It's official.
yeah, best content around, man. Off the Ball Network, man. We joined, I believe it's about a week ago, man. And
Yeah.
listen,
Yep.
I promise you guys, no other sports network got the NBA and NCAA covered like we do, man. Off the Ball Network, those two sports are wiped out, and NFL content is on the rise, man. So I think we do it better than anybody else, man.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely get the NFL ball rolling very soon. We got some stuff coming up, and I think everybody love it. So yeah. So let's talk about the SEC. So Zach, what are the games to watch in the SEC this season?
Ah, man, so I got a good mix here. I got some conference matchups I'm excited for. And so I just want to preview people because I know someone's going to comment and be like, why didn't you pick this rivalry game? Why didn't you pick this game? Listen, everyone knows, everybody knows LSU Alabama matters. Everybody knows about the Iron Bowl. Everybody knows about Georgia and Florida. So what I want to do is highlight some games that you don't know about that you probably should tune into. And it's funny if you put Steven's comment up. My
Yeah.
first game is actually an Arkansas game, and it is Arkansas versus Texas week 2. Now, a lot of people are going to just look at that who are average college football fans, Couch Coach, and
Hmm.
say, oh, Texas is going to run away with that game. I'm here to tell you that Texas is on upset alert week 2 when Arkansas rolls on that field. Listen, Arkansas last year, do not let the record fool you, was leading Georgia at halftime week 1, dominated the first half. They should have beaten Auburn last year if the refs know the rules and understand Bo Nix threw the ball backwards and it was a fumble on a backward spike call. They had a lot of games that were winnable last year. I think Sam Pittman has been completely overlooked as a head coaching hire. Their quarterback situation, yes, they absolutely, they got to find a way to replace Felipe Franks at quarterback. But listen, KJ Jefferson is one of the most complete quarterbacks that they've had, I would say, probably since like Ryan Mallett. And that's a long time ago. And if you don't know who Ryan Mallett is, I understand because that was back in like 2010 when Arkansas was actually really, really good. And I think Arkansas this year, College Coach, is going to be such an interesting team to watch this year because they have the defense. The defense was there. They finally have the recruiting. And KJ Jefferson is a 6'3", 240 quarterback that's a playmaker. And you're going to know his name. Traylon Burks is back at wide receiver. They got Jalen, I think it's Catalan at safety as well. Sam Pittman has brought what he was building over there at Georgia on that coaching staff to Arkansas. They have a top 5 offensive line in the SEC. The receiving core is top 5. The secondary is there. The only question I have is that defensive line. But the good thing is there's a lot of questions surrounding Texas this year. If Arkansas goes in and is competitive, the perception of the SEC, which is one of the weaker teams in Arkansas or perceived weaker teams in Arkansas, goes and competes against one of the top Big 12 teams. You're talking about the SEC is going to be screaming their dominance over the Big 12. And so that's a huge game for me. And then let's go ahead and just mention it, Couch Coach. Georgia Clemson week 1, arguably right now the biggest game of the year. And now, I don't know if people know this, Darnell Washington and Tyke Smith both came down with injuries this week for Georgia. So it's their top DB and their top returning pass catcher are both down with injuries on top of George Pickens already being out. There were rumors that they were going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks with foot injuries, but now there is a chance they can play week 1, but it's going to be something to monitor up until game time. You're talking about the biggest game out there, because if Georgia can pull this upset off, you're looking around the country, if you're an SEC fan, being like, who can touch us?
Yeah.
Georgia might not even be the best team in the SEC to some people, and they just went and smacked the light years the best ACC team in the country. And so then they're going to point to Ohio State getting mollywopped last year in the national title. They're going to point to the years of Oklahoma mediocrity in the college football playoffs, and then but I don't think, let's be honest, Couch Coach, I don't know if any SEC fans outside of me know the Pac-12 exists, so that's why I didn't mention them. But when you look at this Georgia Clemson game, you are looking at we've been talking about the SEC monopolizing college football. We talked about it with the Alliance 2 weeks ago when we talked about the Big Ten Pac-12 Alliance. If the SEC wins that game, it's going to be like letting the school bully beat the biggest, baddest kid in school. I mean, you're just going to pump up the ego of the SEC. That's a huge one. And then I want to get to some conference ones, and I want to start with Alabama, Florida, Week 3. SEC Championship rematch. This is important. One, this will be Bryce Young's first road test. He's got to go into the swamp against a very good defensive team in what's going to be the Florida Gators. Two, this is Emory Jones' first really big test as his first year as the starting quarterback for Florida. We're going to find out if Bryce Young and Emory Jones are the real deal or not week 3 when they face each other. And this is also a huge game for Dan Mullen in the SEC East. He lost Kyle Pitts. He lost Kyle Trask. They lost so many people to the NFL draft that there's a lot of question marks on the offensive side of the ball. We did a fall camp preview this week that we dropped where the Florida offense in the most recent scrimmage allowed over 7 sacks and had 35 yards rushing against their defense in a real scrimmage in fall camp. If they go out there and do that against this Alabama team, they might lose by 50. I mean, they are going to get killed if they can't run the ball against Alabama. This is Dan Mullen's chance to prove that he has built this Florida team into a year in, year out contender where they can overcome the losses to the draft like we've seen in Alabama, like we've seen in Georgia do year in and year out. So this is a contender matchup, Alabama, Florida, Week 3. Also love Texas A&M, LSU, Week 12. These are the 2 biggest threats, in my opinion, to Alabama out there in the SEC West. Week 12 is going to be huge. LSU last year, I understand 5-5. There was a lot of question marks about whether Ed Orgeron was the guy for the job. They are going to be loaded this year. I will be dumbfounded if they find themselves at 500. LSU's that team I think is going to make another big jump forward this year. A&M has to replace Kellen Mond, but there's people saying A&M might have the best defense in the SEC this year. So this is going to be a contender matchup. Who is going to challenge Alabama for the SEC West? A&M, LSU is really going to determine who's there. And then a final one, man. This one, a little bit of bias, but this is going to be an interesting matchup for me. And it's not the Auburn game you're thinking. It's not the Penn State game. It's not the LSU game, the Bama game. Auburn, South Carolina, Week 11 for me is a very important game for the SEC because of this. You have 2 first-year head coaches, Brian Harsin, Shane Beamer at South Carolina. Shane Beamer won SEC Media Days. Any channel that covered SEC Media Days, Shane Beamer was the MVP. You love what he talked about. He was making recruiting pitches to recruits in his opening press conference. I mean, this guy looks the part, is the part. When you're the son of Frank Beamer, the expectations are already through the roof. He's the real deal, in my opinion. This is going to determine whether Auburn, 1, made a good job, I guess a good decision by firing Gus Malzahn. 2, what does Brian Harsin do with this Auburn team? 3, what is Shane Beamer doing over there in South Carolina? This is really going to determine the trajectory of both of these programs with first-year head coaches. Whoever wins this game is going to be in a great spot moving forward into next year, great positive momentum. And whoever loses this game is looking at a very bad season, because the week after this game, South Carolina has almost a guaranteed loss to Clemson, and Auburn has almost a guaranteed loss to Alabama. So this is the last chance. I mean, these two teams could be fighting for bowl eligibility here as well. And I'm just being realistic. Auburn fans are going to crucify me for saying that, but it's a fact. Because this was Arkansas has the number one hardest schedule in the country. Auburn has the second. So they have to beat teams like South Carolina. This is going to go a long way to determining the trajectory of both these first-year head coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Shane Beamer, a massive recruiter.
Oh man, listen,
Yeah.
I don't know if people are paying attention. Shane Beamer, right now, in my opinion, is working his way up to being the top 5 recruiter in the SEC. That guy is doing work. And if there's anyone that can bring South Carolina back to where Steve Spurrier had them in the early 2010s, it's going to be Shane Beamer. South Carolina made an outstanding hire. And also, he's just that young, like youthful, exuberant, full of energy head coach. And he's following the Lincoln Riley blueprint, where he is just connecting and he's recruiting his you-know-what off. And Shane Beamer is going to be a factor in the SEC moving forward.
Yeah. He was very responsible for letting a lot of Virginia talent, keeping them and keeping them at Virginia Tech. So yeah. Shane is the guy. Yeah, I was really excited when he got that the USC of the South. Let's get it right, because down here it's USC. I keep telling people we call South Carolina USC. Everybody's like.
People don't know that, because I remember when I was a kid watching it's like Comcast sports games. It was USC on the ticker like that. It's a real thing, and it's a real debate on who's the real USC. But they kind of lost that when Reggie Bush came to town, and then South Carolina kind of went down. So, but yeah, it is USC around town, and South Carolina fans will let you know it is USC.
Thank you, because everybody look at me. We talk about USC. I call it USC of the South. I had to preface that, but back maybe 03, 04, before Reggie, but even before even before maybe the turn of the century, the 90s, it was USC. It was USC. Now we got to call it the USC of the South, because everybody pretty much up north and Midwest and West, they thinking Southern California. No, we talk about South Carolina.
Yeah, listen, you got to educate everybody on that, man. All these 2000 babies don't remember when South Carolina was really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's get that point. So, Zach, what are the players are watching the SEC?
Man, so I always try to get my biases out of the way first, and I don't even feel like this is a bias pick, because if you watch college football, how good this kid was. And that's Tank Bigsby, Auburn running back. He's arguably the best running back in the SEC right now. And last year, man, he was a true freshman coming to Auburn in a Gus Malzahn offense where everyone thought he was going to be featured. And then they didn't even play him as much as they should have early. So in the games where Tank got more than 15 carries and ran for over 100 yards, Auburn was undefeated. And in the games where he got less than that, Auburn was 2-3 in games where they didn't give Tank the ball. And it never clicked. And then he came down with the injury against Tennessee, in which he hurt his hip, and he just never was the same down the stretch. And that really hurt Auburn when they went and faced Alabama in the last game of the year. It really hurt Auburn when they went to the bowl game and really got exposed by Northwestern. Tank Bigsby, man, he actually had the most wins above average replacement in the country for a non-quarterback as a true freshman for Auburn. And it was the third highest graded running back, only behind Javonte Williams and Khalil Herbert before his injury happened in week 12. He had 5 touchdowns. He averaged over 5 yards a carry, had over 800 yards rushing. And the biggest thing for Tank Bigsby when you turn on the film is his ability to make people miss an open field. He always makes one guy miss, and he's always falling forward. I really am interested to see how Brian Harsin and Mike Bobo, the new offensive coordinator, plan to use Tank Bigsby, because usually Harsin has that lead soul back in Boise State that he leaned on to carry the offense. That can be Tank Bigsby if he can stay healthy. In the spring game, you saw he made one cut, took one to the house for almost 70 yards just in a blink of an eye. That's the type of explosiveness this guy has. He also is a factor in the kick return game, one of the best kick returners in the country. For me, the question for Tank Bigsby's success is one, injury, because his first year he got hurt. How does he return from that? And two, is the offensive line play for Auburn. The offensive line play has not been the best. They had one of the worst offensive lines in the country. So for me, I really want to see how much that offensive line progresses and what Tank Bigsby can do. And when you watch his film, every single Auburn fan will tell you he looks like one of the guys that his jersey's hanging behind me, and that's Cadillac Williams from Auburn. He has that ability to get into the open field, make that one cut, and he just has that it factor when you watch the film. And if you don't believe me, just go ahead and flip it on and you'll understand what I'm talking about here. But Tank Bigsby, for me, is one of the players I'm most excited to watch. And a lot of experts and NFL draft scouts are also looking to watch. And, I actually went with two more defensive players, man, for my other ones. One is a guy I've already mentioned who might be hurt week one, which is why Clemson, listen, if you can bet right now, if you're a betting guy, take that 3.5 point line if you can, because it's about to skyrocket if Tyke Smith can't play for the Georgia Bulldogs. He's a West Virginia transfer at safety. He's going to play, I believe it's called the spear position, which is like the star position in a lot of defenses. It's like that hybrid nickel safety. That's where he thrives at West Virginia. That's where he's going to thrive at Georgia. He actually was the highest rated coverage safety in the country last year, was the sixth highest graded defensive back in I guess in the country. And what makes Tyke Smith so special is how versatile he is. He played multiple snaps at the corner position. He played over 300 snaps at slot, played over 200 snaps in the box, played some snaps on the D line, played some snaps at free safety. So what he's going to bring to Georgia, who their biggest need is secondary, he's bringing experience, he's bringing speed, and he's bringing just that it factor, man. He did not allow a single explosive play last season, Couch Coach, which zero plays allowed where he allowed 15 or more yards on a single play. And he only allowed 10 catches in over 40 targets last year. So that just shows the level of defender you have. A lot of people love Tyke Smith at the next level. At 5'11", 200 pounds, he's a perfect size for that hybrid safety spot. Tyke Smith is a guy you're going to watch week in and week out at Georgia really make an impact. And for my last player, man, I got to go out to LSU. And this was a transfer that shocked me, and it's not going to be the defensive player everyone thinks in Derek Stingley, because everyone knows about Derek Stingley. We've talked about him 2 years on this show, and like my show since he came out, we've talked about him. Mike Jones Jr. might be a name a lot of people have heard of. He played at Clemson at that linebacker and hybrid safety spot. Made a big pick against Ohio State in the playoff game this year, was really one of the leaders of that defense. He ends up transferring out of Clemson, heading down to LSU, which lost Jabril Cox to the NFL draft, who was a North Dakota State transfer. So they had a huge hole there. Mike Jones Jr. is going to be the voice and leader of this LSU defense as it tries to rebuild from a historically bad year. He had a 90.2 coverage grade for a linebacker, Couch Coach. That just it doesn't even register to some people how outstanding you have to be as a linebacker. And they always try to give you the worst matchup, and he always proves them wrong. And he also is a great blitz weapon. He had 11 pressures on his 48 pass rush attempts last year, and he's so fast coming up through the middle, and he's so smart with how he times it and where he steps with his first step that he's almost impossible to block. So Durante Jones comes in as LSU's new D coordinator. They fired Bo Pelini. So Durante Jones comes from the Minnesota Vikings, in which he got to work with Anthony Barr. He got to work with a lot of great linebackers at the Vikings. So Durante Jones is going to use him in a variety of ways, where we're going to see him back up as a hybrid type safety. We're going to see him in the box as a middle linebacker. They can slide him to the outside, and he's also going to be used to blitz the quarterbacks, and he's fast enough where I don't think there's a quarterback in the SEC that can realistically outrun him. So Mike Jones Jr. is the switchblade for this LSU defense, and I'm so excited to see how he fits down there in Death Valley.
Nice. So let's get that. Sleeper teams in the SEC, which could run a bevy. Definitely the
Man.
depthiest teams.
Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, personally, really everybody is a sleeper outside of Bama and Georgia because, to be fair, like, I don't think anyone's picking them to win anything other than those two teams, but I'll go with one in the West and one in the East. The East team is Missouri, and I had a real tough time. I wanted to pick Kentucky, but I have a little bit of questions about their secondary and what they're going. And they lost a lot of offensive linemen, and I don't know what Will Levis is bringing at the quarterback position for Penn State. He did impress me at Penn State, but when you look at Missouri, Connor Bazelak was just a godsend last year. Everyone thought Missouri wasn't going to have a quarterback. He had the fifth most efficient passing offense in the country last year with Connor Bazelak. So he's returning. The running back game is a question mark. Receiving is a question mark, but I really like their offense and defensive line. I think it has potential. And the biggest thing with the sleeper, man, the schedule has to lay out nicely. You get Central Michigan week 1. You should win that. Boston College is a winnable game, but you do that road trip to Boston is going to be tough. So that's going to be an important one. SEMO is an FCS team you should beat, and then North Texas is your other out-of-conference matchup. So let's say 3-1 is like the worst-case scenario there, unless an upset of epic proportions happens for Missouri. You get Kentucky early with a brand-new quarterback, so you should win that. And then your other first SEC game is Tennessee. I have no doubt looking at the first 6 games, Missouri can't be 6-0 headed into Texas A&M October 18th. So if you're sitting at 6-0, you have a shot. And then the best thing is they don't have 2 difficult back-to-back games in a row. So you get A&M on the 18th, then you get a bye week, and then you get Vandy. Let's be honest, a bye week. Then you get Georgia. Then you get a first-year head coach at South Carolina before you head to Florida, and you end up with Arkansas. So I don't feel like drawing Arkansas and A&M was too terrible. That's way better than drawing, LSU or Alabama as your West, I guess, cross-division rivals. Their schedule lays out nicely. Florida has questions all over the offensive side of the ball, so I think that's up for grabs. The real matchup comes November 6th when Georgia comes to town. Can Missouri even make it competitive? But for me right now, there's no doubt in my mind that Missouri can finish second in the SEC East with ease. And that's if they just play up to an average potential for this team. But if they take that next step with Connor Bazelak, Eli Drinkowitz comes from that App State lineage of coaching that they have major success there. Eli Drinkowitz is not afraid of anybody. He's made it known. He came into the SEC and said, we want everybody. We want to smoke with everybody on our schedule. So, and I think his team takes that mentality, man. They play so hard, and I love teams that just aren't afraid, play tough physical football. Jelani Williams at safety is a player to watch, and Mookie Cooper at wide receiver are my 2 X factors for this team. Can they step up and live up to the potential? You already got Kiki Chisholm at wide receiver and Martez Manuel at safety. So those 2 spots are pretty secure. The offensive line looks great. Case Cook is back. Michael Maietti is back at center. So for me, Missouri is easily the sleeper in the East. And I know what everyone's thinking who's tuned in. Ole Miss has to be the sleeper. Ole Miss has to be that. Until I see Ole Miss play a lick of defensive football, Ole Miss is not going to be my sleeper because they're going to give up 60 to almost anyone in the country. My sleeper is LSU, and I feel comfortable picking them as my sleeper because last year they went 5-5, and everyone was calling for Coach O's head on a platter in Death Valley. This year, loaded. So Miles Brennan and Max Johnson have been engaged in a quarterback battle all off season. TJ Finley transfers to Auburn. Well, Max Johnson's the quarterback because Miles Brennan went fishing. His flip-flop gets stuck in the dock and he falls and breaks his arm. So that's how the quarterback battle was settled at LSU. But for me, Max Johnson's the key. The reason Max Johnson's the key, he was the quarterback who led the upset over Florida last year in 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 the swamp with everything to lose. He's Brad Johnson's son. He was more accurate, better at throwing the football down the field, and he has that swagger, man. I'm not saying he is Joe Burrow. He has the confidence, the composure, and the swagger of a Joe Burrow, and he brings what he can do with his legs outside the pocket is something that LSU did not have in Miles Brennan. So I love their quarterback situation, and I love their wide receivers. Keyshawn Boutte was one of the best wide receivers in the country. The offensive line returns most of his starters, and I've already talked about Mike Jones. Derek Stingley and Eli Ricks are the two best corners in the country, both five-star, top 5 prospects in their class. So that's what they got on the secondary. Nobody in the country outside of maybe North Carolina has a secondary like LSU does at the corner spot. Eli Ricks and Derek Stingley are the two best corners in the country, and they play on the same team. Safety, they have a 5-star safety coming in. I'm blanking on his name, but I don't know if he won the job, but he's super, super good. That's where I need Brandon at. He knows all the recruits and stuff from LSU, but CB is not even a debate. But for me, the problem with their running game, man. Last year when you watched them play, they tried to run a four running back committee approach, Couch Coach. I don't know if you've ever heard of someone doing that. Nobody in the country tries to run with more than 2 running backs. They just, as soon as one of them got going, they would take him out and he wouldn't see the field for like another 2 or 3 quarters. For me, the key here is Tyron Davis Price, and that's a name you're going to need to know. He's the running back that reminds me of most of what they had in Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the running back position. And if LSU can establish a true run game, then nobody outside of Alabama in the West can touch them. I think they got one of the best defenses in the country. BJ Ojulari and Ali Gay at the edge rushing position are going to be a problem for most offensive lines. Coach Ed Orgeron went out, got Jake Peets to be his new offensive coordinator. And in case you guys don't know who Jake Peets is, he was the head assistant for LSU in 2019 and went to the Panthers when they just stole everyone from that LSU staff in 2019. So he is going to run a pretty similar system to what they had in 19. Durante Jones comes in as the defensive coordinator. I really am high on LSU this year, Couch Coach. I don't know if they can win the West, but you are not going to see a historically bad defense like you saw last year. LSU is going to be a real contender in the SEC this year.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad you brought the Missouri. And I, you know what, I advocated for them as well. And then also one key thing I like about Missouri, the acquisition of Steve Wilks, and I think that's definitely gonna help as a defensive coordinator. So, and when you said Missouri, my eyes lit up. I was like, so yeah.
People forget about that Steve Wilks hire and how good Steve Wilks is as a play caller and a schemer. If Missouri had any sort of defense last year, they could have won a few of those close games where Missouri was always in that position, but when they needed that one stop, they couldn't get it. And I think Steve Wilks' mind and what he can do on the defensive side of the ball in terms of recruiting could be an X factor in the coming years.
Yeah, and my head coach loves him, so you know.
Yep.
So Zach, I gotta ask you the $1 million question, and it might be a 10-cent answer. So once again, I mean, who will win the SEC?
Okay, so my West pick is Alabama. I think Alabama will come out of the West. They're just too good, man. I mean, their only question mark is Bryce Young. And when your question mark was the number 1 quarterback in the country coming out of high school, that's a pretty good question mark to have, in my opinion. They have a top 2 unit at every position except wide receiver, and it's because they've lost 5 first-round picks in like 2.5 years. I mean, the wide receiving production that we've seen at Alabama is far and away just ridiculous. I mean, to lose Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, I mean, it's hard to match. But that John Mechie returns, and in case you guys don't know who Mechie is, he was who stepped up in place of Jalen Waddle last year. So he steps into the wide receiver 1 role, and a name to remember for Alabama is Aggie Hall. And he made some spectacular catches in the spring game, dominated spring practice, 6'3", 200 pounds, and is a grown man. Top 50 recruit in the country. I'm pumped to see what Aggie Hall does. And then on the defensive side of the ball, man, let's just be honest. No one expects Nick Saban to ever have a bad defense. This could be the best defense Alabama has since 2012 when they just ran through everybody and shut down Notre Dame at the end. Malachi Moore at the slot corner. Jordan Battle might be one of the best safeties in the country. You also have Will Anderson at the edge spot. You have Chris Braswell as well. The defense is going to be there, man. And when you look at what Saban does in terms of scheming and what Pete Golding, as much criticism as he gets, allows Saban to do, is to run. They run so many different things that you really don't know, because when you look at their breakdown, man, they're not in the top 30 of any specific coverage. So Oklahoma, for example, runs a lot of like one defensive coverage. Alabama blitzes 30% of the time. They run cover 1 26% of the time, cover 3 20% of the time, cover 4, cover 6 20% of the time. They're so variable in how they can succeed, which allows them to adjust to teams week in and week out. They don't have just one thing they're good at, Couch Coach. They're good at everything. And so it makes it very, very tough for people to prepare against this defense because you don't know what they can do because they're good at everything. I do like Brian Robinson at running back, but I do think he's a big step down in terms of what they have with Najee Harris. So I want Brian Robinson to step up. They got some young guys behind them that I feel like can be very good players. So I'm interested to see that. And then Georgia's the class of the East, man. Listen, they're going to run through it, in my opinion. Missouri, in my opinion, is their biggest competition, and they might beat them by 20. And Florida's going to take a huge step back. I don't love what Florida has. Their receiving unit's one of the best. Their offensive line's the best in the conference. Their D-line's the best in the conference. The only question I have are injuries now. George Pickens is out for probably the whole year. Darnell Washington might be out 3 to 4 weeks. You also have already lost your top defender in Tyke Smith. You also Eric Gilbert out of LSU transferred in. He's out with mental health issues. So my biggest thing for Georgia is who's going to step up at wide receiver while all these injuries and everything's are occurring. And the biggest thing for me with Georgia is JT Daniels. He's the best quarterback they've had starting in Georgia football games since Matthew Stafford. That's how high I am on him. I think he could be a first-round pick. But the thing that's going to keep me from picking Georgia this year, man, is injuries. I'm very concerned about the loss of George Pickens. I'm very concerned with the Tyke Smith injury right now, and I'm very concerned with what they're going to get with Eric Gilbert and everything. Listen, a fully healthy Georgia team will win the SEC, in my opinion, but that's a big if. So right now, I'm hedging my bets on against the injury bug. I'm going with Alabama in a close one over Georgia, and Alabama wins the SEC again this year.
Yeah.
It kills me, but it's
I
gonna
know,
happen.
I know, I applaud you, and I always applaud your professionalism
Oh yeah.
because we all know it's we know the bitter rivalry. We know
Oh yeah. That's what I
you
always
know,
tell our listeners, man. Don't let my fandom don't confuse my fandom with objectivity, man. Objectivity
exactly.
always comes first on the podcast.
Absolutely, and it definitely shows every year that we've done this, and even when we did the reviews weeks after them winning the national championship, you come on and we talk about the SEC just like a consummate professional. So
I appreciate
so
it,
if
man.
anybody want to come from my boys from South Alabama,
That's a fact.
exactly, But yeah, man. Wow. So, we recapped the Power Five in the 5-week period. The time did go by very, very fast. And
Yeah, I did.
yeah, it was once again fun to recap and to preview the and we getting ready for football next week. So that's another
Next
thing
week,
too,
man.
where it's amazing where We, you
Hey,
know,
they could have practice squad games on this weekend, man, and I'd be tuned in like they were the Super Bowl. Like, just give me some type of football. I just need to see the pageantry, the bands, the fans, man, and
mhm.
I'm just pumped. I'm just pumped to get it kicked off next week. I'm like foaming at the mouth, man. I'm tired of all these storylines and everything. I want to talk some football finally.
Yeah, I know. Like you said, it's that time of the year where, like you said, and it's different than the pros where you got the pageantry, the rivalries, where we look at just from the standpoint of the schools kind of reign supreme more than the actual itself. The mystique around it is more
Yeah.
so of the schools and that, and then we got the upsets, and then the flurry of action on Saturday nights. And that's the thing I like about it, where versus, we had the NFL is a little bit more condensed. You have no more than 16 matchups in a week, and they're kind of
Right.
scattered throughout. And then we have certain games during, not just the Saturdays. We got some games. I think Ohio State play on a Thursday night, do they? I
Hmm.
think they open up.
Yeah, I think they have a
Yeah,
game.
we open up.
There's like
Yeah,
that like Coastal Carolina App States on a Wednesday
we,
night that can determine the
yeah,
Sun Belt.
yeah,
There's a bunch of games like scattered all over, and like I tell people all the time, I get into it with some of my friends because they're like, I forget that not everyone's from the South. So like, I grew up living, breathing,
yep,
eating, drinking college football. Like it was college
yeah,
football over everything. I mean,
yeah,
down south is different, and
yeah,
I try to get people to understand, man, if you're not engulfed in the college football culture, you don't understand. There's no other sport like it, man. I don't you can throw you there's no other sport other than college sports, man. There's a reason why March Madness is like none other. There's a reason like college football is like none other. You can name any sport. You can give me the Olympics, NFL, NBA. None of it
yep.
matches the energy that you get from college football. The fandom, like how much the fans care, how much they're invested in the kids, like how much these kids want to win. There's no other sport like it. And I'll argue to the death. We can have a debate show. You can bring your facts, I'll bring mine. There's no other sport better than college football, in my opinion.
Like you said, especially in the South, that's the thing where I think people fail to realize. Like, and I'm telling you, if last year didn't teach you how important football is in the South, that's a crystal clear example where they's like, look, we're gonna play, we're gonna have people in the stands. Everybody else, you can have your
Yeah.
cardboard cutouts all you want, but guess
Oh
what?
yeah.
We
But
put butts in seats.
well, and the thing is, like, if you really want to get into the debate, there's a reason why the biggest and best college football stadiums make the best NFL stadiums look like high school stadiums
Yep.
in terms of size. There's a reason why Michigan, who hasn't won a national title since I was born, can put 109,000 people in a seat, and the Patriots struggle to fill up their 50,000 seat stadium. We can debate all day. I'm just saying it's facts. There's a reason.
Boys.
And the thing people just don't talk about, Couch Coach, I graduated from Auburn. Like I'm a part of like that school. And that's why I hate this argument. We'll get into it real quick. People who say we, it's like we, like I like if I got scholarships, whatever. We won't go into all that, but like
Yeah.
I've put over 100 grand into Auburn. I've earned the right to say we, but how many Patriots fans have played for the Patriots? How many Cowboys fans have played for the Cowboys? Like I have a degree on my wall that you can't see on the camera that says Auburn University. That's what separates college football because the fans are tied to the university. The fans give money to the university. The fans have put their own blood, sweat, and tears to be at that university in an academic sense. That's why the passion will never be matched by any sportsman. I've been to NBA playoff games. I've been to baseball games. I've been, NFL games. I'm telling you, man, there's a reason why the NFL game you'll find more people at the concession line than standing up all game with shakers screaming for the team. I've been to a Clemson game, man, where I sat in an adult section, the donor section, and there was a 70-year-old man 2 seats away from me that did not sit down the entire game. There were people on the field.
Yeah.
Go to the Super Bowl. There's people sitting in their seats that never stand up and cheer for a thing. That I'm telling you,
Yeah.
you can't match it. And until you go to a real college football game, I don't even want to hear your opinion on it because you don't understand.
Yeah, and like to those examples, like the Super Bowl is more of a corporate event, so that's another thing too.
Exactly.
Where when you look at kind of NFL, I want to say it's more of a business like, but more so like you said, association. Because like I the only really college football games I've been, obviously UVA, Virginia Tech, but they travel, and that's the thing where you notice. That's the thing I like about colleges more so than anything. They have that type of atmosphere where they travel everywhere they go. So that's the thing. That's the
Yep.
beauty I like about college, and then you'll always see, especially like because I'm maybe like an hour and a half away from Charlottesville, but they always are
Mhm.
UVA groups. There's always Virginia Tech groups here in Richmond. They fill up bars on a random
Yep.
just Saturday if they can't make it, or the teams on the road. If they're somewhere else, they'll fill up the bars, and they're like the Virginia Tech Association, and then even I never went to University of North Carolina though, but there is a alumni section, alumni
Yep.
affiliation in Richmond, which I'm so glad that they put that I'm a part of it. Even though I didn't go to
Yep.
school, but they welcome the consummate fan in their little sphere, and I love it. And it's like you said, and that's another one where they pack places out, like so
I, I mean,
regardless of
like
where they go.
when I was a student at Auburn, like I didn't miss a game. Like I don't care where we were playing. So like my class ended at like 2:30. I remember it was like my sophomore year at Auburn. My class ended at like 2:30. Me, my sister, and one of our best friends packed up the car and drove like 14 hours in a car to Arkansas to see Auburn, Arkansas play. That ain't happening in the NFL. And guess what? There was an entire section of Auburn fans in Fayetteville, Arkansas,
So
for a
yep.
game that we were ranked, but we weren't. Like we already had 2 losses that year. Tell me what NFL games being sold out with some teams that don't have a chance at the Super Bowl? Not a single one. And it's just a fact. And when you go to a game, when like you're walking up to the stadium, you hear the band playing, you hear the fans, and like you get those butterflies.
Mhm.
Man, it's just not the same. I'm telling you, and anyone who needs tickets, let us know. Like we travel on our show, like meet Brandon's a season ticket holder at LSU. I got connections all over the country, people I know that we've had on the show. We'll get y'all to some stadiums. You got to experience it before you can have this debate. Because I promise you, once you go, and especially if you go to a big game,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and this all the and then like the students. I think what I really like most of it is student sections. Like I
Oh
like
man,
like I like in my even small experience like UVA, they got the hill. So you see all the students and they're on the hill and get a little route, especially it just depends on the competition and who they playing. But you see that type of stuff and then you're going to campuses. So that's another thing too, where it gets
hmm
raucous. Like I like, and that one time, even at the FCS level, I was impressed because I went to a James Madison game
oh man,
when they had game day.
A plus fans, A plus fans over there in
Yes,
James Madison.
and I'm telling you, and that's probably one of the best football experience I've had as far as college football wise. And I've been to like FedEx for like West Virginia game. It was okay. But like that JMU, it was different. And then it's crazy because it was
hmm
freezing. So it was like I didn't really. It was so good that I didn't even care. Like I'm in the mountains and I'm freezing. Like that's
Right,
just
and
that environment.
th- that's why I hate neutral site games personally. That's why I
Hmm.
hate like the Georgia Florida game. Like I've talked to both fan bases. Like we've had people
Yeah,
on a channel. That why is that game not being played in Athens or Gainesville? Just
yeah,
imagine the swamp packed out for a top 10 matchup between Florida Georgia.
yeah,
And looking at it, like the reason I hate neutral site games is because, like you said, you're taking away one of the things that makes college football so special. When Oregon Auburn, I went to that game in Dallas, Oregon Auburn preseason opener.
hmm,
It was great. It was fun. The stadium was electric because both fan bases traveled. But man, how much cooler would it have been if I got to travel to Autzen, be on Oregon's campus, see what it's about, be in that stadium, or they got to come down and experience what Jordan Hare and Auburn, Alabama is. And what doesn't happen is a lot of these NFL teams, like they're based in big cities or whatever, and like that's like the identity. But tell me a team that would pack out a city like in Auburn, Alabama, and make it the biggest city in the state of Alabama on game days, or pack, or I mean, what other small city do you want to use? Pack out in Ames, Iowa
Ooh,
on game day for a top 10 matchup, or Manhattan, Kansas, or what, a Pullman, Washington when Mike Leach was there and they had game
yeah,
day. I'm telling you, man, it's not even a debate. And the only people who seem to be arguing NFL argue TV numbers, and that's fine.
yeah,
More people probably watch it on TV, but the tradition, the pageantry, the band, the feeling, the passion of the fans is not matched by any other sport.
yeah. And I can only imagine. And I right, and like you said, I've had it on a small scale. I couldn't imagine, like you said, going to Auburn, Auburn, Alabama, Tuscaloosa, like
Man,
Fayetteville, or Starkville, you
It,
know.
it's different, man. Like I remember we went, me and my best friend from high school, Blake, man. We got tickets. Something we got like a season ticket holder who couldn't go, and we just went. Like we're two Auburn fans. Like both of us bleed orange and blue. We went to watch LSU Alabama and Bryant Denny that year. Fournette was just killing it. It was like a top five matchup. Man, you can't match that. It was raining and that 102,000 that 102,000 people packed to the brim, and that doesn't even include probably the other 25,000 that were just there to tailgate and not even go to the game.
Yeah,
Mean,
yeah.
it's a different atmosphere, man. And like, listen, I beg people, just go one time, man. I promise you, it's worth the money, and you'll be like, man, that was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had.
Yeah, yeah, I can only imagine. I need to experience that at least from the South perspective. Yeah,
Hey,
from the
we'll get you
South.
down there, man. Just hey, let us know what game you want to come to. Me and B Dub got you hooked up, man. Just let
Hey
us know.
man,
I got
yeah, we gotta
connections in
do
like
that.
all the SEC schools, all the
We got
SEC schools,
yeah,
man.
we gonna talk about that. Yeah, we gonna get that going. But
Hey, then
yeah,
go with
man.
me.
So this wraps up the Power Five preview. Once again, definitely appreciate you, Zach, for
Oh
coming
man,
on
I
for these
love it.
5 weeks, and we're gonna find a way when we get this all going again in some form or fashion. We'll do some brainstorming and come together with some formulating idea, and we'll make this more of a not a seasonal or a biannual event for this to this occur. So
Man, anytime, man. As soon as you hit me, man, I'm like,
yeah,
hey, I got to stop everything I'm doing. That's couch coach.
yeah.
Always down to come on, man. Anytime.
Yeah, and the feeling is mutual as well, man. Definitely always. And like we said, I always appreciate you. Came with guys show in October. So definitely that. And then we did the reviews right before the Super Bowl, and we was able to
Mhm.
do all that and kind of condense that in between the Super Bowl. So that was definitely a great thing that we did. And we just add on to it, down the road, and we got stuff off our sleeves.
Oh yeah.
We'll get some ideas brewing and get that going. And definitely, once again, appreciate you, Zach, for coming on. Appreciate my guy Steven for chiming in, and shout out to my guy Rich who chimed in as well. And Rich, just hit me up, DM me. I guess let's work. It's football season, so we definitely got to work, Rich. So yeah, we'll get that all going. So definitely appreciate everybody for tuning in to this week's with this special Power 5 preview where we preview the SEC. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode. We out.